On a day in May 1954, after more than 50 years of struggle for equal rights, a breakthrough was made with a single sentence: separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. This Supreme Court decision would remove segregation in education, changing the politics of America forever, reforming its society, and sparking the civil rights movement. Not only did it mark a milestone in civil rights, but it also made states responsible for the long-held discriminatory actions. This is the story of Brown v. Board of Education. Initially argued in Topeka, Kansas, Brown v. Board of Education involved Oliver Brown among others who argued that separate but equal educational facilities violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which the states were responsible for following. Therefore, the states had failed their task of following the Constitution. While it was controversial at the time the decision was published in 1954, it was necessary and still impacts us today. We begin our story with the court case Plessy v. Ferguson, where its decision marked the beginning of separate but equal treatment in 1896. This allowed states to pass laws enforcing segregation, which then led to the mistreatment of African American citizens in often separate but unequal facilities. Relations between white and colored citizens were becoming increasingly frayed during this time, eventually culminating in the Springfield Race Riot of 1908, where a mob of about 5,000 white Americans and Europeans destroyed black homes, businesses, and murdered black citizens simply because two black men had been accused of attempted rape and murder. This riot, compounded with the increased rate of lynchings of black people, served as a catalyst for the formation of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, as it showed the necessity for a group to fight for colored citizens' rights. The NAACP was founded in 1909 and quickly began working on ways to overturn Jim Crow laws and disenfranchisement or deprival of the right to vote. Around the 1910s, the NAACP began to use legal action to target disenfranchisement and segregation, and by the late 1930s, federal courts were more open to lawsuits regarding constitutional rights. Because of this, the NAACP started a legal department to reverse the separate but equal decision, which was headed by lawyers Charles H. Houston and Thurgood Marshall. Murray v. Pearson was among the first cases argued in this campaign, where Donald Gaines Murray was denied admission to the University of Maryland because of his race in 1935. Since the school had not admitted him solely because of his race, it violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, stating, "Nor shall any state deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." This led to Murray being admitted. This was followed by Missouri ex-rel Gaines v. Canada in 1938, where Lloyd Gaines was denied admission to the University of Missouri because of his race. Like the previous case, Gaines was required to be admitted with the reasoning requiring that any programs that white students had must also have an African American equivalent counterpart. In 1950, two important segregation cases were filed that would be the most important predecessors to Brown v. Board of Education: Sweat v. Painter and McLaurin v. Oklahoma State Regents. In Sweat v. Painter, Heman Sweat was denied admission to the University of Texas because of his race and Texas segregation laws, stating that separate schools should be provided for the white and colored children, and impartial provision will be made for both. He sued the school for this, initially losing, but appealed to the Supreme Court, where the decision was ruled in favor of Sweat because the school for African Americans was not substantially equal. On the same day of the decision as Sweat v. Painter, McLaurin v. Oklahoma State Regents had its decision. George W. McLaurin, a student, faced segregation inside the University of Oklahoma and sued, got denied equal access, and appealed to the Supreme Court, where the decision was ruled in favor of McLaurin because different treatment to a student deprived him of the 14th Amendment rights. In 1951, a lawsuit was filed against the Topeka Board of Education from 13 parents and their children, with Oliver Brown at the front, to reverse the segregation policy the Board of Education had. Most of the children had to attend segregated schools that were further away from their homes than all-white schools. This district court ruled in favor of the Board of Education, citing the separate but equal standard in Plessy v. Ferguson, and that the schools were indeed substantially equal. However, the decision also came with 9 findings of fact, noting that segregation had a detrimental effect on children of color. This decision was called Brown v. Board of Education and was appealed to the Supreme Court combined with 4 other cases: Briggs v. Elliott, Davis v. School County Board of Prince Edward County, Gephardt v. Boughton, and Bowling v. Sharp. All of the 5 cases were NAACP sponsored, with Thurgood Marshall et al. Arguing the case for the plaintiffs. On the defendant's side, Paul E. Wilson et al. Argued the case for the various school boards. Because not all of these cases had unequal facilities, the debate was focused on whether segregation was legally permissible and if the 14th Amendment allowed it. The primary plaintiff argument was that the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment required people to be treated the same, thus making segregated schools unconstitutional, as violating the 14th Amendment also violated the rights of students. Additionally, they claimed that segregated schools in their existence could never be equal by depriving African American students of equal opportunities. This argument was supported by the Dot test, in which Kenneth and Mamie Clark let children of different races choose which dolls were better. It was found that the white dolls were consistently chosen as the better doll, which was used as evidence that segregation caused psychological harm in children of color. The primary defendant argument, however, was that the legal precedent of Plessy v. Ferguson and other historical cases proved the validity of the separate but equal doctrine and provided equal protection of the laws. This argument also claimed that public education was a matter for the states out of reach of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court case was first argued in spring of 1953 but was unable to come to conclusion and asked for a rehearing in the fall of 1953, primarily focusing on whether the 14th Amendment allowed for segregation in schools. Out of the 9 justices, William Douglas, Hugo Black, Harold Burton, and Sherman Minton approved desegregation. Felix Frankfurter and Robert Jackson were concerned about the enforcement but preferred desegregation, and Chief Justice Fred Winson, Stanley Reed, and Tom Clark noted various reasons for the continuation of segregation. In September 1953, however, Chief Justice Fred Vinson died with Earl Warren replacing him. Finally, on May 17, 1954, the Supreme Court announced a unanimous 9-0 decision in favor of the Brown family and other plaintiffs. The decision asked, "We come then to the question presented: Does segregation of children in public schools solely on the basis of race, even though the physical facilities and other tangible factors may be equal, deprive the children of the minority group of equal educational opportunities?" The reply was yes. Reaction to the decision was generally positive in the North, while many Southerners disapproved of the decision and viewed it as a disaster. Compounding the effects were Brown too, the case to determine how integration was to be carried out, causing many white Southerners to further decry integration and use various methods to block it. In 1957, a group of African American students known as the Little Rock Nine attended the recently integrated Central High School in Arkansas and were blocked by the Arkansas State Guard under Governor Orville Faubus. However, President Eisenhower asserted federal control and superseded Faubus' commands. This is just one of many examples of students being denied access to integrated schools by local governments because of segregation policies. Many movements started to block the enforcement of integration in schools, like the White Citizens Council, Massive Resistance, and the Southern Manifesto. The Massive Resistance movement aimed to get Virginia officials to pass laws barring segregation and had many schools shut down in 1958 and 1959 in attempts to block integration. The Southern Manifesto was written around the same time as the starting of Massive Resistance in 1956 that promised to circumvent the Brown v. Board of Education decision and condemned it as a violation of states' rights. The White Citizens Councils, later Citizens Councils of America in 1956, were founded 2 months after the Brown v. Board of Education decision and spread from Mississippi. The organization was founded in response to civil rights activism. To solve this issue, they used various tactics like violence, economic harassment, broadcasting of beliefs, and voter suppression. Among other methods of resistance were freedom of choice plans, which gave students freedom to choose whatever schools they wanted to go to. However, the white schools typically failed to prevent integration. In some areas in the North, segregation policies already in place were hard to remove and officials sometimes denied segregation happened in the first place. In Harlem, New York, for example, no new schools had been built since the turn of the century, resulting in overcrowding at schools with inexperience. However, reactions were generally more positive, with states like Kansas, Missouri, and Arkansas enforcing integration plans. Despite the resistance, however, Brown v. Board of Education played a key role in the civil rights movement. As there was massive backlash and social change following the case, many African American people felt humiliated to still have segregated facilities, which was a major factor in Montgomery bus boycott. This would lead to Browder v. Gale banning segregation in public transportation and the awareness of Martin Luther King Jr., both of which were vital to the civil rights movement. But the impact of Brown v. Board of Education does not stop at the civil rights movement. Even today, income inequality by region redistributes resources, causing educational disparities. It has been shown that only high-income white families live in the affluent districts created by income segregation, while black families with identically high incomes live in districts more similar to those of low-income white families. This links to Brown v. Board of Education in that the prevalent problem is against segregation, yet it is a harder problem to solve because of the income disparity between countries. To conclude, Brownlee Board of Education had a long struggle but changed the course of civil rights by changing the social landscape of America, sparking the civil rights movement. Though it sparked several forms of resistance in the South and some parts of the North, it was ultimately necessary to assist the rising students and force states to take the responsibility of following the Constitution. Even today, it is relevant in recent events like the increasing income disparity causing educational inequality.